welcome back to the podcast 102 Meters. I am Martin.
This is Shuki.
And today we will be talking about Takashi Murakami. We've just recently seen a show at Gagosian Gallery in London, which we thought was more intriguing than... Well, we thought it was actually quite intriguing. And so we decided to speak about him a bit. Shuchi, on to you.
Yes, so I think when after seeing the Gagosian exhibition in London of Murakami, I thought it really changed a lot of my opinions on him. And I went on a bit of a journey researching him and reading a lot, well, not reading, actually watching a lot of videos about him. But then how about we first start with our general impressions about Murakami the artist?
Yeah.
What's your general impression of him before seeing the show?
Well, I think he always struck me as an artist whose art involved commerce, and it was at the center of what he does. You know, I vividly recall when he published NFTs, and I think he's a quite iconic artist because he harnesses the power of the media and of recurring images, and also of creating his own cosmos of imagery. Like, images I associate with him. It's like this, daisy-like flower, yes, with a smile. And I associate a rather sleek, somewhat... I always considered him, certainly prior to seeing the show, I always considered him somewhat lowbrow because, just very sleek, commercial, and I guess
a little bit
tacky, and perhaps there's not all that much depth of meaning to his work. You get what you see in a way. You get like a shiny surface with a nice flower on it.
Yes, I think so. I think also with the NFT project that he did in New York, I think it was 2021 or 2 or something, it also felt a bit like I thought he was someone who was just following trends, when NFT is hot,
maybe
he go
also
with
sell
NFT.
out. Also with all of his fashion collaborations.
Exactly.
Someone who does what people tell him to do, and that's the end of the matter.
Exactly. And it also felt like he's someone who's already had the prime of his time, because his great success was in 2003 with the LV collaboration. I thought that was probably the best that he can do in a sense. And these years he's kind of just regurgitating what were the sort of imagery that he's been doing, and going on to new adventures like digital art and NFTs. So yeah, that was my impression of him before we saw the show. But then the London exhibition, I think it really changed my mind a bit. First because just how well done the paintings are. I've never really seen a big Murakami show before, I have to admit. So I wouldn't say I'm particularly familiar with his physical works. I've seen a lot of imageries online, which are essentially very flat, and you can't see the
you're right.
Yeah, the extent of the detail and how finished it is in reality.
And I think what's interesting is, they look very finished. They look like they're digitally made, or they look like they're not handmade works, when in actual fact they're all silk screen printed works. And he does that, well, his team, I should say, does that very meticulously, because you need a different silk screen for every color you apply, and it's layered very diligently and precisely, such that it looks like a digital image. And then, on top of that, he will add, I presume, some kind of varnish. And
we can also just give a little bit introduction to the exhibition first, actually, to get the idea. So the exhibition in London, it was originally created for a museum exhibition in Kyoto, and so the idea was that there was a group of Nihonga, like these traditional Japanese paintings, and on these are called what, the fans, the dividers,
Right.
with like painted Japanese paintings from the 17th, 16th centuries. So very ancient traditional paintings. And the idea of the curator was to have Murakami recreate these traditional works and to do a Murakami version of them. And so that was the original concept for the Kyoto exhibition. And so I guess part of the lineage is also that Murakami had obtained a PhD for Japanese painting back in the days in 1993 when he was still studying. So he does have a background in Japanese painting, which he has always been incorporating it into his own artworks throughout the years. But in this show, he specifically chose a couple of traditional Japanese paintings and then recreated them. And in his own work, he's still used a lot of traditional methods, such as using the gold leaf. So he would apply gold leaf and even like have speckles of other colors in the gold leaf. And was it like gold leaves like incorporated into the acrylic colors in the backgrounds, which is like a specific technique that you'd use in these decorative Japanese paintings. And it's quite, I think, also quite highly technique.
Yeah.
So you really need to be very good at it to do it so precisely. And but of course, all of these is not done by Murakami himself. He has a gigantic team of like hundreds of people helping him.
Right.
And quite funnily, he'd said that, I finally got to use all of these techniques that I've learned years ago, but of course, I'm not doing it myself. I actually hired some Japanese painting like students from university, and they're so much better than me at this.
Yeah.
So you have the idea of what sort of an exhibition it is like.
Yeah.
So really what really surprised me is after watching his video of how he made these works in his studio. So for each work, there is not only, so each of these figures in these paintings, they not only have one color, some of them have several layers of colors in there. So it's kind of like, what do you call these clothes with all these different patches of color? Camouflage.
Camouflage, yeah.
Yeah, it's like camouflages of colors.
And they were all done via silk screen, and so
yes, I mean they look extremely
must be extremely precise and
exactly. And all of I looked very carefully with the videos. It looks like all of the lines of the designs, they are also screened as well. So everything on the canvas is silk screened, and you really couldn't tell that it's actually handmade like this. It looks like it's just literally be printed.
Right.
And especially with the first time I've seen a Murakami work was actually one of those pixeled flowers from a couple of years ago with the NFT project.
Yeah.
And those ones, when I saw it, I literally thought it was just printed on canvas. I was thinking, like, why would you want that? Something that's just printed on canvas. But then he said in a video, very interesting, that he said, with these works, we actually spent a lot of time trying to figure out a technique to make them so flat that it looks like it's printed, but then it looks so printed that people thought it's actually printed, and like all of our effort is like gone to nowhere.
Interesting, yeah. And what about the imagery in the show? I mean, what's the interest of Murakami adopting this Meiji imagery from these traditional Chinese paintings in Kyoto, I believe.
Japanese painting.
Japanese, what am I saying? Yeah.
Yes. I think part of Murakami's general incentive in creating these images is to actually just to spread Japanese culture more and have people internationally understand more of Japanese culture, and also have young people being more interested in historical works of Japan, but also obviously having himself being in the canon of the development of Japanese art.
Yeah.
I think both of these are very important incentives for him. But also I think with this friend curator of his who asked him to do this project, and he very happily collaborated.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, it seems to me that Murakami, I mean, he's often a person who perhaps evades very precise definition, similarly to pop artists such as Andy Warhol. He's the kind of person you can ask to commission. I mean, he's someone who would do works by commission, just like Andy Warhol would,
Yeah.
if you're a famous celebrity, or, famously, there was the show of self-portraits at Anthony Doffey Gallery in the mid-80s, I believe.
Yeah.
And apparently, what happened was that Andy asked Anthony Doffey, what should I paint for your next show? And then Anthony told him, well, why don't you do a series of self-portraits? I think that will be well received by the market, as opposed to maybe piss paintings or other series of works. And it seems to me that Murakami is someone as well who would execute works by command, as it were.
Yeah, I think that both of them has this myth-making element to it as well. It seems they make us look like they're not thinking at all.
Yeah.
They just do whatever is told, but we know which is not exactly true, especially with Warhol. I mean, of course, he thinks a lot about all of his works and very carefully makes them. But yeah, I think that's part of this characteristic and persona that both of them portrays for themselves.
Yeah.
So why don't we do a just small introduction to who Murakami is, then we go into more of the other topics.
Well, I think you're the expert on that, so...
No, so we'll just very briefly go through. So Murakami Takashi, he was born in 1962 in Tokyo. And then in 1993, he graduated from Tokyo University of Arts, obtaining a PhD for Japanese painting. So apparently, I think he was the first person to have obtained a PhD for this degree, for this particular subject matter.
Right. Go on.
Yeah. And then in 1994, he went to New York on a grant, I think some sort of Rockefeller grant of some sort. And he had the opportunity to stay in New York for a year to create art, to look at a lot of things. Maybe that was also the first time he saw like Jeff Koons and being in touch with all of this American pop-up and American culture. And after that, he started to having shows with Perrotin and with Blum and Poe. Those are probably the first galleries that he's had, Western galleries.
Right.
And showing him in LA and in Paris, and then there we go. That's his life. And all of his most iconic subject matters, like the Mr. Dobb. Do you know Mr. Dobb?
No, what's that?
This character that he's created with a kind of like a Mickey Mouse and with D, like B, on his ears.
Mm-hmm.
And this character and also the smiley daisy flowers.
Yeah.
They all had their roots from the 1990s, so he's been using them ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the early works also of his also includes these really large figurines. Kind of probably a little bit disturbing. I think they're quite disturbing. Of this like naked boy who's jerking off with a stream of semen that surrounds himself.
Okay.
And also with this naked girl with gigantic breasts with breast milk jerking out surrounding herself. Oh. So these are some of his early works that received highest auction records in the early days.
Yeah.
And that's what he was known for. I think he was a little bit hated by the circle of otaku in Japan. Like they were called otaku because they were being called otaku, as in referring them as these people who were really into anime and cartoon and manga and video games and doesn't do other things. Like their interest is so heavily invested in that and doesn't is not really involved in other social life. Basically, it's a kind of negative term that people's used before, but. So Murakami, part of his art is also taking from all of these subcultures from Japan, including the anime culture, like the manga culture and all of that. And then it came on to his big break with his collaboration with LV.
So was that what made him like internationally very big, you'd say, or?
I think that's what made him very big in terms of having people outside of art world know him.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. So in 2003, I think Marc Jacobs collaborated with Murakami and made this very iconic multicolor. I think there's 33 colors or something on these white backgrounds bags, which are they're doing a relaunching of all of this series right now. And yeah, I mean, this collaboration, it not only made Murakami famous, I think it's probably one of the projects that really saved LV from, like, it made LV actually likable for young people and at the time, and being a fashionable icon. I think before that, LV was more of classic old, like, established people would wear them for, like, you know, as a high brand. But with Murakami's collaboration with these new, young, like, very colorful designs, it became very lively and very
expensive but still useful.
Very bubbly designs, right? And so from then on, he has been creating a lot of things up to now with the London exhibition that we saw. And so another thing to mention about Murakami is probably that he was also a curator for quite a bit in the early days. In 2000, he's made this large group show called Super Flat. And it toured in Japan and also eventually went to LACMA in LA. And this show is, I want to talk a little bit about this show and this concept of super flat, which he says that it's, he's also written an article, an essay on it, called it the Super Flat Manifesto of Murakami Takashi. I mean, first of all, so what is the super flat?
I mean, I think that the term is an interesting one. And I believe it's one that he never really defined all too clearly. I think it's something that, I mean, first of all, when you think of super flat, you think of art that, you know, is flat. It doesn't have a lot of depth, both in terms of the surface textures, in terms of the pictorial space. It's not like you see a window view and then a landscape outside of the window. I mean, that's like an image with depth as an example. And I think these are both descriptions that are quite true of Murakami's work, in that, you know, the figures he portrays, typically, not always, they are kind of in like a made-up imaginary space. And I think a last thing I associate with that term is perhaps the merging of high and low culture, and this element that, you know, what you see is what you get. I mean, these aren't works that appear to need too much intellectual scrutiny to be appreciated. They're bright works that are alluring in their own brightness and joy, I suppose.
Yes, exactly. So I think part of this super flat concept also refers to this long history of Japanese visual imagery. As like in Western art history, it's all about the depth of the painting and creating a window, right? But in Japan, with the woodblock prints of the ukiyo-e, and like these prints that actually influenced like Van Gogh and all of the impressionists about the flatness of the image, and those images are very flat already. So like Nihonga, the Japanese paintings and these woodblocks, they're all about this sort of flatness. They also have this feature of this flatness, and so I think Murakami supposedly is also referring to that trajectory of history. And yeah, I think it's quite a curious thing that he's done with this concept. I think he is also very clever in naming it. I feel like he really knows that what are the things that you should do to make yourself established artist. Like you should coin a term for for concepts that you come up with.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily like a big groundbreaking idea.
Yeah.
But like once you've coined a term, it sounds somewhat like you need to know it.
I mean, it has your art seem more important in a way, because you're adding like a term to the lexicon of art, and you yourself, if you've coined that term, probably you epitomize that concept better than anyone else, I suppose.
Exactly. I think a lot of this also comes from this, I don't know, surrealist manifesto or some sort. He's calling this the super flat manifesto.
For
I mean,
sure.
nowadays we don't really have any like proper trends or
manifestos.
Sweeping manifestos anymore. And if you have a couple people doing this, it
grabs people's attention, I suppose.
Yeah, but I think, but then on the other hand, I think he also has a point. Like this new generation of artists who's done all of their art surrounding this aesthetics of like anime and manga. They're really occupying a section of the art world now, I think.
That's true. I mean, I guess you also had auctions at Sotheby's, I believe, called Kawaii. Which would feature like Rukaku and Murakami and Yoshitomo Nara, and
Javier Kayaya, and
with not Japanese, but still he kind of like buys into that concept. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so before when I was talking about all the videos I've watched, so basically Murakami has a YouTube video where he actually talks to a lot of like politicians and general cultural people and other like even just like business people, just anyone who he is interested in. And in a video he also mentioned that he suggested that there's no new trends in the Western art world. Like he's very confident the future is in Japan. We are doing what the future is.
Interesting. So his idea is that there's not really any new trends in the Western world, and so perhaps less of a sense of progress. Whereas in Japan, I mean, if you really think of the last 30 years, you have this, call it the super flat movement, which is certainly a quite new aesthetic, whereas, what we've been doing in the West has, in a way, been regurgitating abstract expressionism, Le Nabi, or Fauvism, or what have you.
I think after all of this, watching him talk, it feels like I was actually really reviewing what we've been looking at and how we think about art. And I think he definitely has a point. Like this new aesthetic is not something that the West could have come up with.
Yeah.
It's something totally different. And if you think about all of the, like the ukiyo-e or a lot of all like the classic novels that we have back in the days, they were all, what you call it, mass culture. It's not classic culture, right? And I guess now that with all of this anime or this manga aesthetics and these culture and the stories that they try to tell and the things they're trying to do, the world they're trying to build, it's actually something very new and perhaps it's something very important for the future, for the culture of the future.
Yeah.
And this idea that Japan is the future is kind of quite true, because like also in China, there's this saying right now that Japan is ahead of China 20 years, basically. Japan is our future.
Interesting. So you would even say, because Japan had 30 years ago an economic downturn, China is experiencing what Japan did back
exactly.
then.
This is our bubble burst right now.
Yeah.
And this is so many people talking about that right now, is that like after huge progress, and then you have this bubble burst, and then people are more and more looking at entertainment and looking at, instead of trying to, I don't know, make money and have, because you can't really make big money these days now. So what you look at is entertainment and the small pleasures in your life, and trying to take your life slower and have a stable job, and all of that is happening in China.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
And perhaps, I mean, I think one question I'm curious about is, I mean, we've already broached on how, you know, Murakami and the entire superflat movement, if you will, how it's, you know, strongly connected to pop art, in that, you know, it's a merging of high and low culture, and it has often tends to have a very sleek aesthetic that in a way emulates the aesthetic of packaged foods and, you know, the consumer society. And, you know, of course, the Americans did have a quite pronounced influence on Japan. I mean, you know, following the end of the Second World War and the defeat of Japan, you had a strong military presence of the US in Japan. And, you know, I also believe a quite widespread, or certainly significant, adoption of American culture that you would find, like American chain, you know, supermarkets in Japan, whereas you would not find these in mainland China or in many other places of the world. So I'm curious, how do you tie Japanese super flat art to the American influence, particularly after the Second World War?
I mean, I think there's two ways of looking at it. I think one way that definitely Warhol is a huge influence. I mean, Warhol is a huge influence on all contemporary art, but it's definitely a huge influence on this pop art in Japan. And is including like how Murakami creates his art. It's this factory style, and then with
silkscreen.
This specifically silkscreen, exactly. It's just all from Warhol, and also this persona aspect. He definitely puts on a persona. That's all from Warhol. But I think it's good to also bear in mind of the difference of the different cultures of post-war America and post-war Japan. I think there's very, very different moods to what these two countries were experiencing at the time.
Right.
I mean, with Warhol and post-war America, it was very much an idea of embracing commercial capitalism, in a sense, and embracing all of these commercial products. It's all of the Coca-Cola is great because everyone can drink the Coca-Cola. It's a celebration of this American culture. I mean, in
a way, like many of these products would have been products of the middle class, and it was only through, you know, the rise of the US economy after the war that these products had become everyday items. Yeah,
and it's also a sign of Americanism. Like, they're celebrating these are American products as well.
Yeah,
it's really their pride and I don't know, there's a celebration of all of this, but I think in Japan what is very different in terms of mood is that Japan was what they call a defeated country. They are the people who were the bad people in history, right?
Right.
And I mean, with also what you said about the American military presence in Japan, like Japan is a very weird country in terms of structure after the war. I mean, it was not allowed its own military. and a lot of its politics and law and constitution is all very dependent on America and Americans' decision on what constitution that Japan could have, right? And so it didn't have the right of military and in terms of like protecting its own country and then sovereignty. But then again, they had a lot of help from America to build their own economy. But the mood of Japan in terms of progress is very different again to what China experienced, as in this sort of economic progression. As I think China is very much, we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Like we are going to grow our economy. We can grow into the second biggest economy or the biggest economy in terms of politics and economy in the world globally. But I think Japan has certain limitations of what it can do, and all it can do is grow the economy. And maybe they were able to buy the Rockefeller Center in New York back in the 80s. Yeah. They can use these sort of economic powers, but there's certain things that they couldn't do.
Yeah.
And in that trajectory, I think they've really developed a whole. I think what we see in Japan now this is also actually something Murakami's pointed out about his own art, and that is what his own art is actually about. It's not just this beautiful aesthetics of this cuteness, but it's what's underneath the cuteness. It's all about this mentality and sentimentality of post-war Japan being the society and the mood of the country. It's this idea that they have so he has all of these smiley faces, right, of these flowers, of these daisies. Like he says, this is Japan. Like all Japan can do in this world, on this world stage, is be a smiley and harmless flower.
Interesting.
And have people like them.
But do you think that's an apt? Have people like them? I think that's a good point. I mean, if you think of Japan, I mean, probably, I think Japanese culture is one of the most powerful exports of the country, and also one of the most powerful cultures in general. I mean, you have Japanese restaurants everywhere, and there's an admiration of Japanese culture that's very widespread. And that is not really shared by any other country in this world. I think Japan has a very special global dominance when it comes to celebrating cultural artifacts, habits, and what have you.
Exactly. Also, when you go to Japan, especially as a foreigner, I mean, maybe now there's too many foreigners, but at least the general impression is that you get the best service, you get a great experience as a tourist, and why is there so many people wanting to go to Japan for tourism right now? It's because of the Japanese culture and what they've established for themselves as being this extremely, I don't know, not welcoming, but like it's very attractive. It's very beautiful. Everything is beautiful.
Yeah.
Everything is so clean and beautiful. The toilet is beautiful.
Yeah, it's warm as well.
Exactly. I think like after you've thought about that and then you look at his flower paintings, Murakami's flower paintings, are like,
yeah, that's
it's really deep.
Point. And how does that compare to Germany? I mean, in a way, that's also an interesting comparison. I mean, whereas Warhol, you had like American pop art. After the war, you've also had a German take on pop art, capitalist realism, Polke and Richter most famously, who would have a very critical take of capitalism. Perhaps, I mean, I think one of the issues they identified within their art was, how can we suddenly celebrate consumerism and embrace like the economic wonder that Germany was living through in the 1950s and 1960s, when in fact many of the people in charge are still the same people, or at the very least closely tied to the very same people who perpetrated a genocide on the Jews, and in fact, Germany is divided between East and West. I mean, there are many reasons to be.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think that's also the mentality of Germany at large, still today, that there's a tendency to look back and to say sorry in the most pronounced and meaningful way for all of the atrocities caused in the Second World War. And in a way, that's maybe also the role that Germany has taken on the global stage. I mean, they have a lousy military and
Yes, I mean, I remember going to Berlin, and the take-home message for me was that they're very, 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 very sorry.
And in a way, that's the role they play diplomatically, that they want to be ethically, at the forefront. I mean, the former German foreign ministry described foreign policy as a value-led foreign policy, whatever that meant. I mean, there's a certain arrogance to it there as well, in that, whose values. But I think there's this certain urge and demand to be very critical of one's past, and that's also tied in the German take on pop art, as it were. But I'm digressing. So, how do Germany and Japan compare?
Yes, I mean, I think what you said about post-war Germany, this whole mentality also reflects, I think, on the aesthetics and the sense of identity and culture of Germany that we perceive now. That you can barely think of a German style. Like, what is Germany? It's this, when you think of Germany, you think of this very austere, serious, because you're always critical. I mean, there's nothing too fun that you can think about. I mean, there's beer, but that's about it.
Perhaps it's part of our culture to not celebrate our culture too patriotically and
yes, because I think the German style historically it's just been too much associated with Nazism and nationalism.
And so in Japan it's quite different. I mean, they kind of focus on what their strengths are, namely being this benign, lovely, good service, happy place, as it were.
Yes.
And that's reflected in his art.
Exactly. And you see the craftsmanship in there. I mean, how well made it is. Yeah. And you see, the cuteness in there.
And that, of course, has a history. I mean, I think, if you also think of like Japanese nitsuke, like these little, like carved, often animals that little objects that are carved very meticulously, that you would have in your pockets, or lacquerware, and this whole tradition of having like national treasures, people who work in certain crafts such as pottery or lacquerware, who are elevated to the status of national treasure. That's in a way perhaps also it's part of this overall theme and of Japan as this meticulous, beautiful place that really values culture, craft, good service, and what have you.
Yes. And speaking of that, and all of this culture of craftsmanship in Japan, but then in another way, it actually comes back and to be criticizing Murakami as an artist, even though he part of him and does embody all of this craftsmanship.
Yeah.
But he is actually very hated in Japan. Like, a lot of Japanese people doesn't like him, and he doesn't do many shows in Japan. Then, which is like part of the reasons that people doesn't welcome him as much, and a lot of, I think, Japanese either press or like critical like critics, they're also quite hard on him.
And why is that? I mean, in a way, he seems to epitomize Japanese culture in so many respects, certainly from a Western perspective, as we've already discussed.
I think the perspective is slightly different, and I mean, in Japan, I think what Japanese people feel the pride of is this craftsmanship. It's this being very
Also humble, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. Being humble and being very much focused on your own craft and not thinking about anything else, especially not thinking about money.
Yeah.
So I think what he's done with his art, this total embracing with commercialism and embracing with fashion and kind of a lot of his art, you kind of just feel like this is total commercial, this is total tacky, and this is money written all over it.
Yeah.
And that is what the reason why a lot of Japanese people doesn't like him. I guess also quite likely that why a lot of people who's interested in art and feel like this is too low for me, because it's too commercial. I just want to add one more thing about Murakami and this comparison that we've been talking about with American pop art and Warhol. Also there's this time difference that he came after Warhol. I think what's the difference between the two also is that there's a huge progression from what Warhol was doing. He was doing all of this factory work and producing paintings as if they are from a factory. But Murakami has taken it one step ahead, and he is creating merchandise with them.
Yeah.
And not only merchandise, there's films, there's NFTs, there's collaboration with fashion brands, there's then most recently he's doing trading cards. Do you know what trading cards are?
No, go on.
So you know those Pokemon cards?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. But with his own flowers theme.
Interesting. I mean, so long as they're silk screen printed by him, I'm fine.
I don't think that's so screen printed by him though. And you can have them collected.
Okay.
So these are kind of like collectible trading cards. And this thing, I thought it was really interesting because like when I first got to learn about Warhol, I thought the Warhol's prints are just like trading cards.
Yeah.
Like, how do you understand Warhol's market? You just need to understand the logic of trading card market.
Yeah.
You need to have this special motif, and with this special size, special color. That is the most expensive Warhol. It's exactly the same with trading cards.
Yeah.
If you have a golden, I don't know, Pikachu or something, it's more expensive than a normal Pikachu, basically. So I think Murakami's created this whole universe of commerce with his works.
Yeah.
And that is many steps from what Warhol was doing. But then I think it also brings me back to think about what this means for art at the end. If this is the future of art, if it is, what Murakami is suggesting is that it is all about entertainment. It is the ultimate entertainment. You have an all-rounded entertainment. You have the paintings, you have the merchandise you can buy, you have this great art piece that creates a lot of visual entertainment for you. And I think that is great in a sense because the greatest art in history, they are all very amazing visual entertainments.
Yeah.
But where does this lead us to? It makes me wonder.
Yeah, interesting food for thought. I mean, in a way, I think, also having spoken to you now, I think there's a lot more intellectual depth to his work than I had at first anticipated. But certainly, I think the art in and of itself, perhaps separated from its historical context with American pop art and German pop art, I think, of course it is very flat, and it's you just look at the images, and that's probably what most of what you have to the works in question, and that, of course, is perhaps just pure stimulating entertainment.